This is something that they don't really tell you very often.
So if you are going to talk about criminal activity, it'd bloody well be very interesting, very unique.
Write a bad draft, and once it's all out on paper, you can't get worse from that, right?
As you're criticizing something, don't just come across as someone who will burn the place down.
Exactly.
Show us how you will build and nurture relationships and people around you also.
Get a life experience, guys.
Stop writing.
You asked, we answered. Today we're super excited to answer your questions about the college application essay. So we opened it up to the floor to understand what you guys are really struggling with. We're really going to pull back the curtain today, as we always do on the College Essay Scoop, and dive deep into understanding what no one tells you about the college application essay. Joining me here today are Megha and Annie once again. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
Weathered, seasoned veterans of the college application process, and we're super excited to answer your questions.
So excited.
Let's get started. So let's hear the first question, shall we?
Okay, the first question is, what personal qualities or values are most impressive in an applicant that one should try to exhibit in their college application essays?
Leadership. For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Kindness.
Yes. This is something that they don't really tell you very often, but there is a component of kindness they're looking for in applicants, because marks and grades, these are things that many students get, but nobody wants an arrogant high performer, arrogant or individualistic team leader.
It's okay if you're like the nice person in your essay. You don't always have to be the best, the bravest, the boldest. Sometimes just nice, kind
Hufflepuff.
words. Yeah.
This is one place where being nice will not work against you.
Yeah, that's really important. I think you mentioned leadership.
Yeah.
That's very important. And leadership, again, doesn't always have to mean moving mountains and, leading 100 people. It can also just, again, mean really small acts that you incorporate in everyday life. Just taking initiative in a class to stand up against some sort of injustice on behalf of another student, or just speaking up on behalf of mom in a family setting where they're pulling her down.
Basically, how you took charge in a situation where you could have easily given up and felt powerless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what do you think?
So I actually want to interrogate the origin of this question, right? The question is, what are the most appealing qualities that universities are looking for in my essay? And I would actually reframe it to think about, well, what are the most appealing qualities about yourself first? I don't think, rather than trying to artificially foreground qualities that you may or may not have, turn inwards first and think about what are the parts of yourself that you are most proud of. What are the traits that you really admire in yourself? And then try to align them with traits that universities are probably anyways looking for. Like you mentioned, leadership, compassion, I would say cultural rootedness, perseverance and grit, resilience are just a few. But honestly, it's gonna show if you're trying to show off that you're a leader when you're really not. Maybe you're something else.
Yeah.
So start within, and then think about the strategic admissions perspective, sort of secondary, once you've identified your story and the traits that you want to bring out.
So I think a good trick here would be, if the questions, if you know that leadership is a quality that colleges are looking for, it's how you exhibit leadership in your own life. So for instance, you might be the mom of the group, so lean into the maternal instinct there and show us how that makes you take charge of a situation. You could be the nice person and then connect being nice to being a leader,
Resolving dispute.
Yeah, you could even talk about being a procrastinator and connect that to leadership. Yeah. So quality A that I bring and the obvious quality that the college wants, and show us that unintuitive connection.
Okay, question 2 is, we all know that essays about sports, injuries, debate, tournaments, divorces, and mission trips are overly used. But what are some other cliched essay topics, especially in our Indian context?
The obesity essay, the Jain essay, the langar essay,
The grandparent,
The list just
grandmom,
keeps going.
granddad
Yeah.
essay.
Dadu ex machina, as Jared would lovingly
Yeah.
say. Some random person giving you advice to fix your conflict, and suddenly, you've from underdog, you're superhero
Yeah.
overnight. The sports essay, where you're losing and then suddenly winning.
Yeah.
The chess essay.
Yeah.
The clock struck 5, 4, 3, 2. I have to make a move.
Checkmate. Checkmate in chess and in life.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Heard that
I
one.
think another cliche topic is the theater or public speaking essay.
Yeah. The angel and devil sitting on my shoulder telling me
Yeah,
what to do.
what's
forever.
right, what's wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
The relocation essay. I learned this from this city, this from this city, this from this city.
Yeah.
That's
Or
it.
moving to a new city was so difficult for me, and here's how
Yeah.
I dealt with it.
Yeah.
The joint family essay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The joint family essay where you essentially just talk about what you learned from each family member and you're not applying it anywhere.
I love my dog essay.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, also, like, I've had so many students talk about or want to talk about their relationship with religion. I've been questioning my religion, my whole family's religious, and I'm this rebel.
God versus science.
God versus science.
Yeah.
That one's a common
Yeah.
one.
But-
I speak for period poverty. So
Yes, the classic feminism essay.
Mm.
I feel like these are cliched, but if you are you can still take the trope and put a spin on it, right?
Do
make
something
it,
new.
Yeah, do something new with it. They're cliches because they work, yes. But how are you making it unique to yourself? How are you making it personal? That's what matters.
yeah.
So, I mean, how do you make a relocation essay new after years and years of
Yeah.
doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Or I mean, even when it comes to the joint family, the langar essay, those religious communities that we've built, show us a new aspect.
Yeah.
I mean, after years of reading about, say, what a langar is, I'm sure an AO knows what a langar is.
Yeah.
Let's show them a new thing that they hadn't considered before. Let's talk about the architecture and how that allows for communal
Yeah.
sharing. Let's talk about not just what you learn from all the members in your joint family. Let's maybe show how you applied those things.
Yeah.
Or say when it comes to I question religion, instead of making a blanket statement there, I question religion, and so therefore from being an atheist I became this. Show us maybe a nuanced understanding of more have you learned about religion. What does it do in your life, or what role does it play in society?
Okay. I'm a terrible writer and I hate writing. What do I do?
Stop writing. Really, no. Writing is, in a sense, reliving your on paper. Go get a life experience.
Get a life experience, guys.
Get a life experience. Come back. If you hate writing, record yourself. Use apps like Otter. Thought partner with someone who gets the fun out in your conversation, someone you love telling stories to, and maybe start by recording yourself and transcribe that or use an app. If you hate writing and none of these suggestions work, then maybe try a little bit of discipline. So you tell yourself that you hate something, you'll do something that you hate for 10 minutes every day, then you reward yourself with something like 10 minutes of something I hate with 10 minutes of something I love. Or
So just write a bad draft. It's okay. Like, if you think you're a terrible writer, then prove it. Write a bad draft, and once it's all out on paper, you can't get worse from that, right? You only get better. So get it all out and then slowly start to take away and add bits to enhance it. And it'll come together at the end.
Another thing I see often is that it's not that you hate writing. That's again another blanket statement to make. What is it about writing that you don't like? Is it the thinking? Is it the format? Is it the topic?
It might be bringing up uncomfortable emotions, right? When we do hard things and when we don't like to do something, it might be because it's bringing up things about how, oh my gosh, like I'm not good enough or I'm not a good enough writer. So confront those. That's why we procrastinate too, right? It's because we don't think that, you know, we would be able to write a perfect draft on the first go. So it's a big mental block. I would also want to address, like, it's a common misconception that admissions officers are looking for these really literary masterpieces in the essay, that it's incredibly creative and super emotionally resonant and it reads like a Shakespearean piece, and they really don't need that. They need you to tell them who you are, right? And really be honest. So
if you have a casual, chill voice, it's okay.
Speak in that. And most importantly, and this is also something I've learned that is so important every time we've talked to admissions officers, simplicity is always king, right? Being direct, simple, honest, yourself, and not worrying about the bells and whistles of the flair and the fluff and the flowers, and it's not needed if that's not who you are. Please don't force it. They can tell.
Okay. Would writing about intellectual interests be more appealing to colleges?
I think it's about how well you establish a personal connection to something intellectual.
And also, like, I think you can also make anything ordinary and mundane intellectual, right?
Find the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Like,
make it quirky.
We have a student writing an intellectual piece on just giving out hugs and just shaking hands. So it's something you do every day, but have you thought deeper about it?
I think it's also an opportunity now to talk a little bit about HOTS, which we, often talk about, meaning higher order thinking skills. And this is genuinely important because you are applying to an institution of higher education. Your primary goal of going there is learning and intellectual inquiry and scholarly pursuits. So it is in your interest to bring out that you have some intellectual depth when you're experiencing life. So even if you're telling a very simple story or a personal experience, if you can somehow bring out like some commentary on a discipline that interests you, students also often kind of talk about philosophical considerations when they're making a decision or they're in a dilemma situation, or they might, if they're describing an experience they had while interacting with people, they might bring in an element of psychology and just interrogate the evolutionary psychology behind why someone's behaving a certain way. Or you can bring out technical, even like technological concepts if you're talking about a robot that you made, right? Like subtle flexes that, hey, I'm telling this personal story, but I'm also low-key a really smart person and I know how to talk about things at a very high sophisticated level.
Yeah, and I think one way to make any topic intellectual is do a social commentary, bring in pop culture into it. That immediately just makes you sound like you're up to date with what's happening in the world, and you're essentially adding your 2 cents to the narrative.
Oh no, I was going to say, like, when given the chance, that you can also use some technical jargon, like just using the lingo of your field. If it's like law, then just like bringing in, even when you could use a different word, like using a jargony word could also help.
As long as you're not mindlessly name dropping, it doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
And even if, let's say for an academic essay, you're talking about authors that you've read. Let's say a student of mine talked about Roland Barthes and Foucault and everything, but she connected it to the idea of a dupatta. And how that connects to femininity and feminism, and there's always scope for you to add your own take on these things. Another student of mine decided to talk about Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, which is a novel set in South Africa in a very different time, and she extrapolates lessons from there and talks about modern day rural Rajasthan. Look for a personal element, and if it doesn't exist outside of you in your immediate circumstance, find a personal reason why that topic interests you.
Yeah.
Give your own take on what
Right.
you're discussing, because essentially that's what college is for, right?
Yeah.
You're going to be studying things. A lot of great men and women and people have written across times in history, and it's not for you to, consume again and not engage, because what they're looking for is critical thinking and vitality with that particular skill. So
Yeah.
engage fully,
Yeah.
engage,
Question.
yeah, question, and don't be afraid to hypothesize. Like, even so, what if your theory or your hypothesis about a particular situation is not written in a textbook or not propounded by someone? It's very possible that you've probably not read or encountered the person who's also talked about it.
Yeah.
And it's very possible that you might be the first person talking about it. Effective altruism was something nobody was talking about 3 years ago, and now there's so many takers.
Yeah.
Do good better.
Create your own terms.
Yeah.
Should I write about my relationship or breakup? If
That's a tough one.
if it's a relationship that has significantly contributed to your growth as an individual and as a human, maybe, yeah.
I'd say if you have exhausted everything else,
Yeah.
because every breakup feels profound. You're
Yeah.
heartbroken. Sadness is not quantifiable.
Yeah.
A lot of American high schools and high school counselor memos mention don't talk about your breakup.
Yeah.
Unless your breakup was related to some massive personal tragedy, which has to be a
Exactly.
part of the
Yeah.
application. But don't touch upon it unless you've exhausted everything else. That's all I'd say.
Yeah, it's okay to mention it in passing, just a one-off sentence casually, but I don't think you should base your entire essay
Yeah.
around your relationship and your
Unless you're talking about interesting dating cultures. Like, I had a student talk about how on a date, the person she was on the date with refused to let her pay.
breakup.
And she talks about how in her immediate society, people say that, feminism is no longer a relevant conversation because
Yeah.
rights are equal. But then there is so much internalized patriarchy. She was talking about how on that date she observes men and women behave very differently. The men like each other and the women like each other, where there's a lot of hair twirling and everything on the woman's part. The man speaks more confidently, takes up more space. And it was perhaps a commentary on her social class and how dating is understood there, but
Yeah.
that might be an interesting place to bring it up.
Yeah, again, like you're just like what we discussed in the previous question, you're taking this everyday phenomena and connecting it to a larger social issue,
Yeah.
and that shows intellectual vitality. So, but
Yeah.
otherwise, like,
Is it adding anything to the essay? Just ask yourself that. I'd
Yeah.
say. If it's not, then don't mention.
then maybe not.
Yeah. It's important real estate. You cannot lose space
Yeah.
talking about.
I mean, just like you shouldn't base your life around one person, you shouldn't write your entire college essay
About
around
one person.
person. All right. What if I don't have any major turning point in life? Do I need a sob story for a good college essay?
This is one we've tackled many
Yeah.
times.
You probably did not watch our previous video. Of course
no.
not. Yeah.
Your college essay can be about anything. It can be a fun commentary about curtains.
Yeah.
And-
The important thing to remember about Common App essays is that showcase your best personal values and
Yeah.
qualities. And second, show us what your approach to growth is, because how you do one thing is how you do everything. And that doesn't have to come only out of conflict.
Yeah.
It can also come out of intense passions.
Joy.
And write your strongest story. Write the story that makes you you.
Exactly.
If that's not, it doesn't have any trauma in it. If it's something light-hearted, straightforward, simple, it's okay, stick to it, because ultimately authenticity is key. And
Yeah.
you can't be making up sad, traumatic events for these essays.
Or over dramatizing events that happen to you.
Yeah.
When it's not,
Yeah.
not that serious.
Yeah.
And something we've said before, if you don't want to talk about your tragedy or trauma,
You
take
don't
put a spin on it.
Yeah.
Talk about other qualities you developed
Yeah.
and maybe tell the story through that.
Yeah. And even we discussed this in one of our previous videos. Even if there is a tragedy, there is a traumatic event you want to talk about, the best way to talk about these things sometimes is by infusing it with humor, making it lighthearted, and vice versa, taking a very casual topic and putting some gravitas to it to make it sound more interesting, more serious. So, yeah, you don't have to have a sob story, and you don't have to have any major trauma in life to talk about in your to write a good college essay.
Yeah.
A good rule of thumb is that if your name have we done this in the podcast already? If your name was removed from the essay,
The thumb test.
Yeah.
we talked about it already. But yeah, I mean the essay needs to scream you.
Yeah.
And if I had a student actually, and you know she had come in with her mom, and the mom read the essay, and she was like, you know, if I had just found this piece of paper lying out somewhere in the world, like I would instantly know that my kid wrote this.
Oh, wow.
And of course a mom knows their child so intimately. So for that essay to exude their core values so
Yeah.
strongly and their voice, it shows that you were authentic. And that's a good way to test that it's a truly powerful essay.
But if I had to write one, and this is a question I've thought about very often, it would be about horror stories and oral lores where every child is told this scary story about this demon or this Goliath who's going to come and eat you up if you don't do something. So I would talk about these oral stories and ghost stories in particular from my village and how those have shaped me. There's nothing sad, nothing bad happened to me, nothing crazy ever did, but how that form of storytelling and what those stories were actually hiding and how they've been passed down. I think that might have been my story if I wrote one today.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
What would your Common App essay be about?
I have thought about this for the last 3 years, and
Yeah.
I still have not come up with an answer.
You're not going to write about your relationship?
My counselor said I can't, unfortunately. I don't know. You know, I moved around a lot. I've shifted 8 different cities, lived in different parts of India. But then every time I start to think about it, it's just, it's so cliche, it's so basic. So, yeah, I think I'm still figuring out my Common App essay.
Oh, nice.
What would yours be about?
Well, I did write one.
Yeah.
And mine was about summer camp. And nothing extraordinary.
Another cliche.
Yeah.
Is it? Must be.
We just said summer camp was a cliche.
Got
no?
it.
But yeah, you did well. So tell us what you did differently.
Yeah, there was nothing sad in that essay. It was literally like my first time going to camp versus my last time going to camp. I went every year. And how I turned from like being that meek student who was just like lost to becoming a really proactive leader in the community, and how I was like teaching everyone. It was like a French camp. And so I was like teaching everyone through music, the language. So I think it encapsulated different parts of my identity, like my love for French. I was applying for French,
Music.
my love of music, and my love of teaching. And hopefully, you know, that sort of came through. But
And your
looking
love
back,
of camp.
I love camp, and it was all about like the wilderness and like being in nature, and that's also so important to me.
Yeah.
So, you know, looking back, I would have definitely written it differently and probably about something else, but like knowing what I know today, but it's fine. I mean, I also think, yeah, I did
well.
I did okay. I also do think it's important to contextualize the essay with the rest of the application, and that it's not the only make or break of everything.
Yeah.
So to not put that much pressure on this one piece of writing, frankly, like it's a holistic review process for a reason.
Yeah.
And just don't overthink it to the point where you're just now like banging your head against the wall because it's not perfect in your view.
Yeah.
You know, Megha, if I was your writer, I might have noticed that you have an impeccable taste in fashion and you moved around a lot.
Yeah.
And maybe I would have encouraged you to think about fashion in the places that you went to.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and how
Yeah.
maybe I've drawn something from each city I've lived in.
Yeah.
That's a very cool
You also
topic.
have an eye for, advertisements. So maybe I would have encouraged you to talk about different advertisements across the country and the world.
Yeah. One
Yeah.
thing that I would really love to talk about is, and I've talked about this so many times, is my love for romance novels and how that led to like some very crucial female friendships in my life. Also taught me a lot of things growing up about, navigating grief, relationships, also sex education, which is so taboo in India. So yeah, I feel like they've made me who I am as a person. So maybe that. Okay. So we have a last few questions. This is a fun one. What are some off-limit topics?
Nothing.
I was gonna say relationships. Like my instinct is like leave the love life out for now. Honestly.
Nothing
Anyway.
if you can make it interesting enough.
Yeah.
A lot of students ask, like, can I talk about my bad grades, poor academic performance? Is that wise? Like,
Like if you have a very solid reason.
But why would you use your Common App essay like, to talk about that?
So
you
I
know?
read this very interesting Common App essay last year. Got into Stanford. And he talks about failing out in school. But he talks about it wasn't that I was a dumb student. It just I lost trust in the process of education. And how he slowly regains trust again through other off-syllabus means. So I think that kind of showed how he's reapproached his learning and education in a very revitalized form.
Yeah.
Again, you have to make it interesting. You have to truly show that you've grown. It's not about explaining your bad grades away. It's about digging deeper as to what happened.
Yeah. The bad grades can just be like a,
It's a symptom
yeah, exactly.
of something larger.
But yeah, shouldn't use the entire essay to just justify the bad grades.
Right. And you're also bringing so much light to it, right? Like you're so much more than just your grades at school.
Exactly.
Why would you like really highlight this one thinking, hey, they like look, like see, I did badly. So I don't know.
And of course, if you're going to talk about bad grades, there also has to be some upward trajectory in your later years.
Yeah.
So if it's a bad grade that you want to explain despite being a model student, then diagnose the symptom and show us your deep analysis of yourself and your situation and what did you do to grow in that period of your life.
So the follow-up is funny because it says, can I write about criminal activities?
Maybe.
I mean,
I'm not
we've had some students who've like gotten suspended for bullying, and I'm not sure if that counts under criminal activities, but bullying is another cliche essay topic. Being the bully or being bullied, both. I would just say, like, if you can't find, if like this should be your last resort.
You always need to think about, like, from the college perspective, am I presenting myself as a liability? Like, if I have done criminal activity or if I've been a menace or a threat to other people in some way in my school, in my community, then they're assuming you're gonna, like, cause problems when you come to campus, right? So it's automatically, like, putting you in such a difficult position where now you have to, like, really make up for it, you know? So if you are gonna talk about criminal activity, it bloody well be very interesting, very unique, and something that is not going to pose a threat to like the people around you in campus on campus.
Yeah, and like you said, like there's so much more to you. Like, is this all you want to highlight in your 17 years of life?
I would say that if you do choose to do a topic like this, it cannot be without a lot of self-awareness and personal growth. There have been essays in the past that talk about culpability, and making the conversation more current. I remember the student talked about the George Floyd situation with Gabriel Garcia's A Chronicle of a Death Foretold, and analyze their situation in context of one very current political scenario and another magical realist book. So you did bring in other elements of your life, but it has to be very well thought out, very unique, and very personal.
Yeah.
There was a student who talked about the dilemma of doing drugs, I think. So, I mean, it's illegal, right? Obviously.
Dilemma of drinking.
Drinking, same thing, right? The decisions that he made. And he actually did get into Brown in Chicago. So
interesting.
But I don't think he ended up drinking. And he was talking, another question is like criticizing your school, right? Or is that one of the questions on the list or not? Okay, but like in your essay, can you talk negatively about your parents, your school, right? Criticizing people or institutions that actually got you here to where you are today.
We had a scholar last year whose essay was about I don't like my parents.
Yeah.
And which is funny because every single time she tried to write it and, ideate it with us, we told her, but you're here because of them. You're going to college because of them. They're paying for your education. How can you say that you don't like them? She stuck to her words. Of course, we, gave it a spin. We kind of added more depth to it through other things. But ultimately, she did talk about her relationship with her parents and how it's not the best.
Right.
I think it's important that as you're criticizing something, don't just come across as someone who will burn the place down.
Exactly.
Show us how you will build and nurture relationships and people around you also.
Which is what she did. And while she was criticizing them, she was also appreciating them for, getting her to this point. So I think that's really important. Shows nuance, shows that you are not just a very black or white person. You're able to think about the gray areas.
So, if I could think of an analogy, this one comes to mind. When you become very critical of something that's not very often openly criticized, it's like you're wielding this metaphorical hammer. And it's up to you to show whether you're going to break the world down with that hammer or are you going to build up something and construct something beautiful with it.
Be a problem solver.
Yeah.
Be a builder, right? You don't like your school. There was a student, he wrote his essay about how his boys' school that he went to was like rife with toxic masculinity. And that's the same school that the counselors are going to write his recommendations. Like they're going to...
And a well-reputed school, right?
Administration is going to read the essay, right? And it's very critical of how the administration dealt with toxic masculinity. And he framed it in such a way that I wanted to be a force of change and make this place better.
Yeah.
So clearly it worked out for him. So
Okay, last question. When do I start writing my Common App essay?
Yesterday.
you haven't started already?
Now.
Yesterday.
In the womb?
You ideate in the womb.
Yeah.
Then you come out and you outline it. You start writing it
When did we
Happy
get
Womb
these?
Escape Anniversary.
take 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2-3 weeks after being born to outline it.
We got you all these crayons.
Yeah.
Use them.
No, but seriously though, you can do it in 2 hours before the deadline, and you can do it 6 months before. It's how badly do you want to get into college? How much effort do you want to show the reader you've put into?
Yeah.
And how deeply do you want to use this process to reflect upon yourself and grow? Like, it's very possible what you wrote in the beginning of the year has evolved by the end of it, but you have nothing to build on or on top of if you don't have your first version.
And now for applicants, for students applying this year, now that summer vacations are coming up, I think it's the perfect time to get
Yeah.
started and finish.
Yeah.
This kind of thinking does require the kind of brain space that
Yeah.
a vacation will afford you,
Yeah.
like summer
Yes.
break. Once school starts, you're going to be juggling SAT prep and school academics and
Predicted
tons of other
exams.
things. Like
Yeah. Wrapping up your
countless
projects.
extended essays, like
Yeah.
it's madness.
Yeah.
Use this time. There's no way that you can creatively just get into that introspective
Zone.
meditative
Yeah.
space when you're being bombarded from all sides.
Yeah.
And even the Dalai Lama has to meditate every day to get into the whole theta zone of the mind.
Yeah.
Things.
Yeah, but I would say now is a good time to start. If you're doing it with the help of consultants, it'll give them time to polish it from their end. If you're doing it by yourself, come back to it maybe at the end of summer break and reread it and see if the essay still feels true to you. If yes, then great. If not, you still have time to rework it. So yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the College Essay Scoop. Thank you for submitting your questions, and we'll be back next time to cover more interesting behind-the-scenes perspectives on approaching and really cracking the college application essay. Do be sure to hit subscribe and comment down below. What is one idea you have for your common application essay if you'd like to share? See you next time. Bye. Lots of love.
That
Okay.
was fun.
Good shoot.
Good shoot.